Hello cruel world, my name is Dr. Shahom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. So today I'm going to talk about the difference between psychopaths and sociopaths. The reason I'm doing this is because somebody at some point asked me on the comments of my YouTube channel to explain this. Sorry, I've forgotten who you are, but thanks for the idea. So I'm going to tell you the similarities between the two and the differences, and I'm going to give you a couple of case examples. The first thing I'd say is that psychopathy is a clinical term, and it's actually a diagnosis. So it's not in the DSM or in the ICD, but there are tests to diagnose it, and we do that on some of the patients I see in the forensic psychiatry services. So there's something called a psychopathy checklist. And in fact, I've done a whole series of videos on psychopaths, and I've actually used Michael Jordan against the psychopathy checklist to see whether he's a psychopath. If you want to find out whether or not he is, go check that video out. So because it's a clinical term, if you asked a bunch of forensic psychiatrists what a psychopath is, they will all broadly give you a very similar answer. Whereas sociopathy is more of a loose term, it's more kind of informal, it's more of a social term. So that means if you ask a bunch of people what a sociopath is, their answer might be slightly different. So first of all, let's talk about what they have in common. So both psychopaths and sociopaths are indifferent to the rights of other people, to the well-being of other people. They lack empathy, they lack remorse. So if they do something to hurt somebody, they don't care. They also have no problem in breaking the law. Generally, they hurt other people, but not necessarily physically. So again, if you watch my series, you will see that a lot of psychopaths can become quite successful, for example, in business. In fact, in one of my previous episodes, I talk about working for a man who I'm pretty sure was a psychopath. So he never physically hurt anybody, but he was very manipulative, and he would often undermine the people that worked for him. Go check it out. If I had to break down the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath in one word, it would be manipulation, and actually deceit. So one word would be deceitpulation. I don't know. So what I mean by that is a psychopath can pretend to care, whereas a sociopath doesn't even bother. A psychopath may appear to function quite highly well, whereas a sociopath often lives on the fringes of society. So a psychopath's good at faking emotions. So let's say you've just broken up with your girlfriend. A sociopath would say, I don't care, I never liked that bitch anyway. Sorry about the language, not my words, it was a sociopath. Whereas a psychopath will pretend to try and comfort you, will console you, but the very next day he's giving your ex-girlfriend a foot massage, and that is not cool. So a psychopath might have family, he might have relationships, he might have a decent career, he might be on your bowling team, he might come across as a nice guy, but he will stab you in the back to get that promotion. Whereas a sociopath lives on the fringes of society. He's like a career criminal and he's proud of it. He's a bad boy for life. Just like Puffy, P. Diddy, Sean Combs. My favourite difference is the fact that sociopaths are quite callous and they're explosive and reactive with their rage. So if you piss a sociopath off, he's going to punch you in the face. He might even give you a very nasty Chinese burn. Whereas if you annoy a psychopath, then he'll like make jokes about it at the time. He'll smile in your face, but he will plot to poison your salmon en croûte for dinner so that you die later on. His revenge is definitely a dish served cold. In fact, in my psychopath series, I talk about the clinical treatment of one of my ex-patients who was a psychopath, and his index offence was very much like that. So a man made fun of him, he joked with the guy, and then hours later kidnapped him and tortured him. And another difference is that a psychopath has absolutely no empathy and no regard for the differences between right and wrong, whereas a sociopath, at least some people would say, that a sociopath does have a sense of this, but it's very weak compared to a typical person. So my first case example, I saw somebody that came in clinic. What was his name? It was Anus? No, not Anus. Thanos. And he was a pretty decent dude. He was a nice enough fella, fairly normal. He was 8 foot tall. He was purple, did have testicles on his chin, but he was decent. He came across as very friendly, very charming. And he was a pretty successful guy. He was like a general of an entire army. But then he started talking about killing 50% of all sentient beings, something to do with spreading the resources. And when he saw the horror in my face, he tried to kind of justify it. He tried to console me, and he told me that there was good reason for it. So then we changed the subject, and he spoke about his 2 daughters, and it was quite sweet because he talked about them very lovingly. But then as we talked further, it turned out that he tortured one of them by removing and replacing her body parts with mechanics, and he pushed the other one off a cliff. And also, it turned out that he kidnapped them when they were children, and he used to make them fight each other physically to gain his approval. And I just thought, that is very manipulative. And he did talk fondly about his friends, but apparently he would either disown them or kill them if they let him down. And I thought to myself, what a psychopath. So I sent him off for some very specific long-term psychotherapy, but then as he was leaving, he kept on banging on about, I think they were infinity pebbles and some kind of glove. Dude wasn't making sense. And then the very next guy that I saw in clinic was a man called, was it Brian? Bain. No, his name was Bain. And he was just horrible. He was really aggressive. He was really rude. He made my receptionist cry, kept complaining about the waiting time, said something like, "I've been waiting here for over 20 minutes. My appointment was supposed to be midday." And then we were talking a bit about his life. He seemed obsessed in bombing this city for some reason. And then he told me that recently he shot one of his employees in the stomach because they lost a commissioner down a sewer. I don't really know what he was going on about. And then he broke another man's neck because this man stood up to him. Very odd bloke. I tried to convince him to try some anger management sessions, but he said something like, I could rub it up my glass. I don't know, couldn't really hear him. You can shove it up your glass. Very odd man, had a speech impediment. Anyway, before I conclude this episode, I just want to introduce you formally to this channel. This is a Psych for Sore Minds. I'm Dr. 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐜𝐡 𝐅𝐨𝐫 Conconsultant Forensic Psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders in courts and in prisons and in secure psychiatric units. I also work as an expert witness. I give evidence in criminal trials. This channel covers a whole range of issues related to mental health and mental illness. Some of it is related to offending, because that's my speciality. I look at high-profile true crime cases, give my own psychoanalysis. I talk about individual diagnoses. I answer questions from the internet. What I'm trying to say is there's something for everybody on this channel. So to conclude, there's a big overlap between psychopaths and sociopaths. They both don't care about others. They will hurt people either physically or through manipulation. They will stab you in the back. They don't care about the law. They have no remorse. They have no empathy. The main difference is that psychopaths are a lot more manipulative, so they can hide all of those traits. So they come across as quite normal. They seem quite high functioning. Sociopaths don't even bother. They like being bad boys. Also, sociopaths kind of can't contain their emotions. They're more reactive. They will react impulsively on the spot. So you need to be careful, because your new neighbor, your boss, your new lover, even your husband, they might have these traits, and maybe they are psychopaths. Dun, dun, dun. Also, just to let you know, I've got a book coming out in spring 2022. It's going to be called In Two Minds. I'll let you know some more details about that on my channel when I'm ready. All that remains for me to do is to beg you to please subscribe to this channel. Not only does it help me out immeasurably, but it actually stops DC making crap superhero films, and eventually one day it will help them catch up to Marvel. That's it. Stay euthymic, and please do not forget, I love you.